Okay, so we just got done talking about the different types of attachment styles, and I really do hope that you will take the time to take a look at your own and kind of discover that, maybe explore your past a little bit and dive into what that looks like for you. So, some ideas about that. Where do you see yourself? What was your prenatal and postnatal experiences like as an infant? Identifying where you may have experienced some attachment disruptions that could have interrupted your brain development that we talked about earlier. We all know that one person in our family or in our lives that in some way or another that um, is unable to get to the thinking part of a reaction. They might dwell in the reptilian part of their brain that they struggle with just the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. They might just react without thinking things through. And if we are one of those types of people, then we do need to look back and explore our youth and explore our childhood and see where those interruptions in our development may have come from and target those areas so that we can begin to grow and reconnect with those new connections in our brain. So we talked about that a little bit in the beginning. If you remember the chart that you saw about the brain development with the brain stem and so on up the 4 levels of brain development from Dr. Bruce Perry, we talked a little bit about what happens when those are interrupted, and you'll see that in the adults around you. And as we kind of go back and explore that, even within ourselves, we might question, well, I'm kind of older now, I'm kind of stuck in my ways, this is just who I am. But science, psychology actually is telling us that we're still able to change, but we need to change intentionally. So to rebuild these connections with children, I will not say is easy, but they have some plasticity, is what it's called in the neuropsychology world, plasticity of the brain. It's flexible yet, where we're able to go back and make these reconnections. I worked with a child in the foster care system that had been quite rejected a few times and was really struggling with their attachment, a 7-year-old. And his pre-adoptive family who he was living with would tell me that he would sometimes curl up in their lap, maybe want to suck his thumb. He's asked for a bottle. And what he's doing is he's regressing a little bit. His brain wants him to go back to that infancy level of development and make those reconnections of feeling attached, feeling nurtured, feeling that his needs are met. And that's his brain's way of trying to make those reconnections. So we don't see that in adults as much, but adults do react in different ways. And so we need to see how we react in certain situations and go back and, like I said in the beginning, with the older we get, the more intentional that we need to be about creating those changes. Neuropsychology has told us for a very long time that after about 25 to 30 this is just who we are. But recent studies within the last 5 to 7 years have really shown that we are able to make new connections in the brain and change our brains and develop more. So it's very encouraging and exciting that we're discovering those things and can continue to grow as humans. But I do encourage you to look up the neurosequential model of therapeutics from Dr. Bruce Perry and kind of take a look at that in relationship to yourself. A lot of this attachment is related to regulation. So we talked about those different stages, those different steps that we make in our development. And the first one is attachment. And from there, we go into self-regulation. So if we have attached appropriately, we start to learn how to self-regulate appropriately. However, children experiencing trauma or disruptions of brain development would become dysregulated. They would not know how to self-regulate those strong emotions. Then that's where we get those negative behaviors from, because children are just trying to communicate what's happening in their brain, but they don't have any words and they don't have those connections to be able to do that. A dysregulated adult, we kind of talked about that. We can't quite get to the thinking stage, might react quickly, might not be able to regulate ourselves appropriately. They probably, looking back, were dysregulated as children as well. They may not have developed that part of themselves. Children will default to survival mode. We've talked about that, the fight, flight, or freeze. That is when a car's coming towards us, we jump out of the way, right? Or we hide from a scary situation. Or we freeze in the middle of it and our brain tries to block it out. So children will default to their survival mode, and we can't blame them for doing this when their brain has not developed the ability to get past that basic reptilian response. And that's okay. And that's where we have to start. We just need to understand that, and we start from there and start to rebuild those connections. So secure attachment, a baby has a need, baby cries, the need is met by the caregiver, and that trust develops. As children, we can see this. They're able to separate from the parent comfortably. They can seek comfort from their parents when they're frightened and feel comforted by their parent. The return of parents is met with positive emotions, and the child prefers a parent to stranger, so they're healthily attached. As adults, they have trusting and lasting relationships. They tend to have good self-esteem. They're comfortable sharing their feelings with friends and partners, and they seek out social support. So children who are able to attach in a healthy manner become adults who are able to attach in a healthy manner. Oops, there we go. So the common myth about children are that they won't remember their connections. And the truth is that we are hardwired to connect. We are connecting in the womb. We understand our mother's movements, her sound, her smell, her music. All of this is stimulating that brain development. Dr. Bruce Perry here, one of his quotes that I appreciate says, "The more healthy relationships the child has, the more likely he will be to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agents of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love." So, beginning in the womb, that's where we're hardwired to connect, right? We build this strong bond with our birth mother, with the woman that carries us for 9 months. And so, just a side note to adoptive parents that are looking to adopt a child from infancy, keep in mind that that baby is also experiencing some disruptions of brain development when placed into an adoptive family. The baby is used to mom's smells and movements and sleep patterns and the sound of her voice and the music she listens to and the people she talks to, and then all of a sudden none of that's there anymore. And so we have to take note of that infants do experience loss as well, and just to be aware of that and work very intentionally on building a strong, secure attachment with baby through skin to skin time, and carrying them in a wrap is very highly suggested for both mom and dad. Talking a lot to the baby, getting them familiar with your voice, just the sounds and the smells, understanding if they're startled by any of those, and making adjustments as needed. Another one of my quotes that I just really appreciate from Dr. Karen Purvis says, "Adoptive parents become the biological parents through connection. we change their biology. What she's talking about here is that a child coming from a hard place, when we meet them where they're at in their development, in their human development, where their brains were interrupted from development, when we find those places and we can get past the behaviors, but meet them where they're at in their development, we are able to nurture them and love these little kiddos into healthy attachment, into healthy relationships. Very, very difficult to go through. Not easy at all, but well worth it, and very possible. So don't be discouraged. And I think that's it for today. So I appreciate you being with me today, for talking this through, for listening. And I feel very honored to have brought this information to you today. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to your local Bethany office, or feel free to email me as well at mleon@bethany.org, mleon@bethany.org, if you have any questions about this particular presentation here. So I hope you learned a little bit, and the best to you as you continue on your adoption journey.